Hello, and welcome to another edition of All or Not According to Jack with your host, Jack Toledano. This somber tone tells everybody that we have lost another in the rock world, another very sad loss today. Uh, so, over the last week or so, there have been other sad losses in the rock world, famous ones that I know, people that I know or knew over the years. So, of course, there was Jeff Beck, which is a very big loss. Unfortunately, I don't really know enough about him and never really listened to his music to be able to put a video together. So I didn't want to do him any injustice. So I left that to others. So then there was Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's daughter, who we very sadly lost her she was in her early 50s to cardiac arrest. Very sad and scary. Rest in peace to both Jeff and Lisa Marie. And then, of course, there was drummer Robbie Bachman of Bachman Turner Overdrive, who we lost within the last week. Another sad loss. I am more familiar with Bachman Turner Overdrive, having liked their music and having at least one or two of their CDs. So that was another loss. But the person that I'm covering today is none other than the great David Crosby. I heard about that earlier today, and that was a huge loss. Uh, so Crosby, Stills, and Nash is a band that I really liked over the years. So let me just bring up some albums just a few that David Crosby was involved with. So everybody knows that David Crosby was a member of the Byrds for their first five albums, and he co-wrote this probably my favorite Bird song, 8 Miles High. Great tune. Love that jangly 12-string guitar. Awesome, awesome song. Uh, then, of course, uh, I'm not going to get into his full history, but so while Sue and I, we every night we get home. Well, I work from home. Sue gets home from work on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She comes over to my side of the room, closes the blinds, and as she was walking by, she saw I had my computer. This was after 5 o'clock. My laptop's still on my lap, and she's like, "Oh, you're still working?" And then she looks at the content on my screen and she's like, "Oh, the Byrds." I'm like, "Oh, you must be reading up on David Crosby for some material for tonight." I'm like, "Bingo, you got it." So I'm digressing. But in any event, so after five albums with the Byrds, um, things were breaking down between David's relationship with the Byrds, particularly Roger McGuinn. Gene Clark and Roger McGuinn were the two, what I would consider the two frontmen of the Byrds. But Gene Clark had left, for periods of time, and I think there was like a butting of the heads between Roger McGuinn and Clark, and of course, David Crosby as to the musical direction. And the culminated with David Crosby sitting in with Buffalo Springfield at Monterey Pop Festival. That didn't go too well in the band, so they dismissed David Crosby. Rumor has it they gave him a pretty handsome, severance package. He met up with Stephen Stills at one of those famous Hollywood parties. I think was thrown by Mama Cass, believe it or not. They met up, they talked, they came up with the concept, they started to jam. They came up with the concept, maybe let's put our own thing together. So then they brought Graham Nash in. So then they formed Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And then second album, they brought in Neil Young. So Now it's Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young in there. I got to tell you, it's so hard to keep track of the different iterations of the band. So you had uh, Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young, Crosby, Stills, and Nash combined. They had 8 albums over the years. Then you had Crosby and Nash in the mid 70s. Well, 3 albums in the mid 70s they put out. Graham Nash, David Crosby, Wind on the Water, which you see right here. It was the most aesthetically pleasing album cover, so that's the one I chose to include. There was Whistling Down the Wire and Crosby and Nash, released in 2004. Of course, along the way, David Crosby had a bunch of solo albums, eight to be sure, and the one you see right behind me, this one is his first one. If I could remember my name, truer words, I sometimes can't remember my name, but so I wouldn't say, similar to me talking about Christine McVie a few months ago. David wasn't he was never the chief writer, but he was always good to bring in maybe 2-3 songs per album. So he didn't write that much with the Byrds, but he did contribute to that. Probably one of their biggest hits, 8 Miles High, which I love. Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Of course, my favorite song that he contributed, both writing and vocals, Wooden Ships. I love that song. Guinevere is another song that David wrote. And then, of course, there was the title track of the second album, the first CSNY album, Deja Vu. Not only did David write and sing that song, that was the title track of that second album. So he did contribute. And, he was a force in the studio, always exerting his influence. And rumor has it that, in my readings earlier today, that he was very political, very liberal. The other thing that pissed off members of the Byrds was during the Monterey Pop Festival, in between songs, he was starting to get into some political speak, and I guess that didn't go over too well with the members of the band, so it was another reason for his dismissal. He started talking about theories of the John F. Kennedy assassination. Wow. But you know what? Creatively, vocally, let's talk about vocally. So while the bigger hits were contributed by Stephen Stills and Graham Nash, and they had their voices were in the slightly higher register, Crosby, there's got to be a merit to what he did, because if not, wouldn't have had him in the Byrds. They wouldn't have had him in Crosby, Stills, and Nash. He was a guest on, a bunch of albums. He was friends with Jefferson Airplane, Jefferson Starship, Hot Tuna, all those bands. Not Judy Collins, Joni Mitchell. I know they've helped each other on various albums in the early 70s. Very tight-knit group. So his vocal harmonizing is, something to be said. So my personal experience with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. So, as a kid growing up, before I really started to get into rock music on my own, and I would say 1977 is when I really started to embrace it and, embrace FM rock radio. As a kid, I would go all these places with my parents, and my father would always have AM radio on as we were driving places, and number of their songs would come on. Teach Your Children, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, Marrakesh Express, other big hit songs of Crosby, Stills, and Nash that escape me, but It wasn't until I bought their first greatest hits compilation so far, that I started to discover uh, David Crosby's contributions to the band. And while his songs were a little more deeper tracks, like I said, some really good ones, like my favorite two are, Deja Vu, Wooden Ships, and of course 8 Miles High. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm not going to go through the full history. Uh, there are some very good articles if you Google it, or you go into Wikipedia, which is where I tend to get most of my information. But David has entered the pearly gates. Another great has left us and will be greatly missed. Uh, Thank you for all your contributions, to rock music over the years, and your legend will live on. One thing I did not mention, one of my very first concerts at the Jones Beach Amphitheater, well, actually, there were two that I saw in the 80s. One that I don't really count because I'm not really a fan of Frank Zappa, though I did see him. And this was at a time before they built the upper tier of the Jones Beach Amphitheater, which overlooks Zach's Bay, which is really beautiful. Uh, Jeff Tate of Queensryche once commented about what a beautiful facility we had down here on Long Island. I did see Crosby, Stills, and Nash in the mid 80s at Jones Beach. Uh, I saw them with a mutual friend of Pete Pardo and I, a guy named John Phillips, and another friend from Newport's name escapes me, but three of us went and checked it out. And I actually got to see the band also. The band opened for Crosby, Stills, and Nash. So it's a really cool night of what I term country rock at its finest. So that's that. Jack Toledano signing off for All or Not According to Jack. I will speak to you soon. Upcoming, we have some more top 3 metal episodes coming up. Next week, I will have a guest on one of my top 3 metal shows, so stay tuned. Top 3 metal albums, that is. So stay tuned. Jack Toledano for All or Not According to Jack. Have a good one, folks. Rock on.